Congratulations, we made it to the end of 2022. That means we get to look back on all of our successes and woes, but most importantly, we get to look back on all the sweet games that we played, which means top 10 best of for us here at GameSpot. Now, I have to say this, I always have to say this, it is never easy for us to figure out this list. It is always very considered, and we put a lot of time and thought into it. But without further ado, here is GameSpot's top 10 best games of the year, as told by the people who loved them.
I doubt you could even imagine it.
Are you prepared to commit a cardinal sin?
I command thee now! Oh, Elden Ring.
At this point, it is no surprise that From Software are making a good game in the year that they release a game. Like, whatever they put out is, at this point, they're one of the most consistent developers of all time. The question was, how do they evolve? And Elden Ring is the answer to that question. It takes everything that they're known for, the soul of their games, the challenge, the kind of discovery, the exploration, the RPG open-endedness, the PvP, the breadcrumb trail of characterization and narrative, and then spreads it across a scale that they've never attempted before. Maybe in small increments they've had areas that are a little bit bigger than you're probably used to, but Elden Ring is their first real attempt at an open world game. And the fact that they pulled it off in spectacular fashion has to be applauded. It takes a lot of developers a long time before they can really nail down how it feels to be in an open world, and they managed it in one shot, and it was to focus on the key tenets of what makes their game good, and that is keep the player challenged and also give them a sense of discovery that is entirely their own, that feels like they're having a unique experience. And that's exactly what Elden Ring is about. You come out of a cave and the world is your oyster. Go in anywhere, any direction, find something and figure out what to do with it, and you'll have a meaningful experience with it. Whether it's looking through a dungeon, whether it's trying to fight your way through a castle, or whether it's just helping out a random NPC with a small quest. Either you will be rewarded with some sort of characterization moment or an item, or just a better understanding of what makes the world tick, or gives you a better kind of layout of where you are. And throughout that, there's always surprises. That's the best thing about Elden Ring. It's always throwing you curveballs. Elden Ring is a game about forging your own path through a world that will reward you at every turn and give you a sense of discovery at every turn. It is an open world game unlike any other because it gives you complete authorship of how you go through it. It has got minimum requirements of defeating a certain amount of Elden Lords before you go and take on the final boss, but pretty much everything else is up to you. Approach it how you want, create the fun you want, and make the stories and the memories that will last with you of your own volition. And that's why it is one of the best games of 2022 for GameSpot.
So Tunic, at first glance, is a cute Zelda-like adventure game where you're a little fox and you explore this world and you fight monsters. And if that's all it was, it would still be a good game, but Tunic is so much more than that. And what makes Tunic incredible is how it leads you to your own devices to discover its secrets. Probably the most clever thing about Tunic is the way it reveals information. You will collect pages which are gorgeously realized in this sort of like SNES era instruction manual. And they're these absolutely beautiful like illustrations, but importantly, most of it is written in the game's own language that it made up. So you don't actually understand what it's saying, but you can intuit what it's saying. And so it's kind of like when you import like a Japanese game as a kid and you don't know what the heck this game is or how this game works or even what the story is, but you're just poring over the manual and you're trying to figure it out. And through that process of just like combing through that manual and playing the game, you are slowly putting the pieces together of what the story is or what you think the story is. And I've never seen a game quite capture that energy and that spirit in the game itself. And I think that is absolutely just like mind-blowing. I think one of the most amazing things about Tunic is the way it rewards sequence breaking. Tunic is full of these like little shortcuts and alternate ways to get things. And probably the coolest moment is later on in the game when you're in one of the final areas and you take this shortcut that brings you all the way back to the beginning of the game. That shortcut was there the entire time. And you could have, at the beginning of the game, used that shortcut to skip all the way to that part of the game if you knew it was there. But you didn't because of the way the game kind of like naturally hides those elements. It makes you want to immediately replay the game and be like, well, wait a minute, if I could have done this in this order and I could have found this ahead of time. And I've never seen a game just so like effortlessly be able to kind of like capture that kind of energy. And for me, it's made it one of the most like impressive and just like magical experiences I had this year. And it's why it's one of GameSpot's top 10 games of 2022.
It is not often that we get to play games that tackle topics of industrialization uprooting suburbia, or exploring the relationship between morality and technology, or even family drama that spans generations. Yet Norco manages to tackle all of that while having hilarious levity and still deliver a heartwarming story. Now, on the surface, it's this rather ugly, pixelated point-and-click adventure, but not ugly because of its art, but ugly in how it depicts the world and how the oil industry has essentially destroyed this New Orleans suburbia. But in creating this kind of muddled, kind of gross palette, it still manages to capture this kind of nostalgic warmth that comes from American suburbia. Norco is a Southern Gothic fairy tale where you play as a person who is coming home after learning about the death of their mother. But upon returning, you also learn that your brother has gone missing. Now, this family drama is at the core of the game, but what unravels are very lofty topics that are seldom seen in other games. It tackles topics of industry in such a way that is fantastical and believable because it is told through the lens of incredibly heartwarming, believable characters. And while a lot of this sounds incredibly seldom and serious, what's beautiful about Norco is actually how funny it is. And I urge you, if you play this game, listen to the guy's story about eating a hot dog. And I tell you, listen to the whole story because it is something you will simply not regret. In the end, Norco is an incredibly serious game that is told with beautiful prose and is still somehow without any pretension and incredibly funny. And all that is uplifted by its incredible soundtrack that also kind of paints the perfect picture, just as its pixel art does too. I think it is a remarkable game that is rarely seen in the space, and it tells a very beautiful in-depth story, but not with big spectacles and over-the-top displays of AAA budgets, but it is purely through just remarkable storytelling. And that is why Norco is well deserving of being in GameSpot's top 10.
Avengers! Assemble. Victory!
What makes Marvel Snap really fantastic is its simplicity, which is kind of what you'd expect for a card game that was designed by a lot of the people behind Hearthstone. But that simplicity doesn't come at the cost of depth or any other considerations like that. Decks are only 12 cards in this game, which doesn't sound like a lot, but what that does is make the actual deck building process a really simple and straightforward thing. You can come up with an idea, you can get a new card and be inspired, throw a deck together in just less than a minute, and then try it out. And because the matches themselves are also fairly short, they only last 4 or 5 minutes at the most, you can take a deck that you throw together, jump into a few matches, try it out, see how it goes, and really not feel like you're wasting your time or otherwise doing anything terribly taxing. And they can really upend the strategies that you implement. You can go in with something in mind, but what ends up playing out can be dramatically different from what you expect. And really, because the matches are short, it really isn't painful. There's even zones that will cause your deck to play out much differently than you expect. They might replace your deck entirely with a random set of cards, which in a different context might sound terrible, but that sort of chaos in the context of a 4-minute match is actually a fun distraction and makes what you're doing, a lot of fun and feel different from time to time. I think what sets Marvel Snap apart from so many other games is just the low barrier to entry to trying something new, that experimentation that is just so much fun, whether it's inspired by getting a new card or just an idea that you see someone else use. You can create a deck and then jump in and try it really quickly, and there's just such a variety that stems from that. You can always be trying something new, and it's really satisfying when an idea you have pays off, 2 minutes later. With the short matches, the easy deck building, there's really ample opportunity for different strategies, and if nothing else, it's a great alternative to doom scrolling. So if for no other reason, that's why Marvel Snap is one of the best games of 2022.
We're called neons, sinners plucked from hell to do God's dirty work. But I'm finding it hard to believe we're in heaven.
Neon White is one of our best games of 2022 because of how it forces you to appreciate speedrunning and basically just playing shooters at an insanely high speed. I'm not really into that. I like first-person shooters, but I'm not super into the high-speed sort of games. But Neon White got me like that just because of how you're constantly competing with friends on your friends list. It's almost like a escalation where I'll beat this mission in 15 seconds and then someone will beat it in 14, and then I'll try to do 13, and then we're splitting seconds by fractions, trying to just beat each other just by the tiniest amount. And I found myself jumping back into levels just over and over and over again. I was checking the scoreboard almost daily to see if anyone had beaten it. And what's even cooler is that you can actually compare your times with the developer times. So if you get fast enough, that little icon next to your name will change to red, and that'll mean you're faster than the developer. And that to me was just so satisfying. Just speeding through these levels as quickly as you can, it almost becomes innate. It's just, I know exactly what I'm gonna do. I don't even have to think, but there is just an intense level of concentration that comes to it. It's the flow state. I could play for hours and hours and hours, and I felt like I was accomplishing so much in these like 10, 15, 20, sometimes 45-second long missions. So there's one mission in Neon White kind of early on that I noticed a bunch of people on my friends list were doing within 8 seconds, and it took me around 20 or so. And I was trying to figure out how that was possible. I ran through the level like 6 or 7 times, couldn't figure it out. Turns out I was basically supposed to bypass the entire set path in order to basically just jump up to the finish. And when I figured that out, it just kind of, it almost rewrote how my brain was working when I was playing that game. I was constantly looking for interesting shortcuts that almost felt like sequence breaking, but were clearly intended. There's such a great moment when you start to realize that the way these levels are built, there's completely alternate ways you can get through them. And that is why Neon White is one of GameSpot's favorite games of 2022.
What is your name?
Marissa Marcel.
When I woke the last time, I was into chaos. I
I was weak and confused. I walked down through the villages. I found her in a field. She was still alive. She was beautiful.
It's hard to talk about Immortality because it is a game of so many different parts. There are so many different cohesive things that have to come together to make the narrative that it has. And one of those things is the performances, which are phenomenal across the board in different time periods and backstages and parties and scenes. They all come together to create this world that every time you click into a new scene, just constantly invigorates your imagination as to what is happening, what is the context, who are these people, how do they know each other, these relationships form, these different environments come to life, whether it's a movie set or a party or wherever you are, to create a world that is centered around this mystery. And then on top of that, there's an entire other thing that I really can't talk about because it's even better to go in cold and experience for the first time. So there's a moment in the game where you're entered into a gallery and these two characters are talking and just having a conversation. You're getting a little context for what's happening, but the game forces you to click on the painting in the gallery, which takes you to another time and space and cast of characters and completely different feel. Even the filming of it, like the actual look of the scene itself is completely different. And that's when I realized and got hooked on the rabbit hole that you go down with each new scene and each new character and each new plot development in this massive mystery that I just wanted to keep clicking, and I wanted to keep finding every possible scene that these characters inhabit because they are so well acted, they are so well set up, they are so well, I don't know, the mood in each of them is so palpable that you can jump from time to time and feel like you're in a completely different dimension, which is, I guess, what they're trying to get at. And so that is why Immortality is one of the best games of 2022.
Mario + Rabbids Sparks of Hope is one of the best games of 2022 simply because it's charming, it's resourceful, and it gives you the complete package of what you really want from a tactics game, of a strategy game, like in its package. And it does so in a way that not many games in this genre really do, prioritizing movement in a way that most games in this genre don't really do. In most strategy games, going from point A to point B, that's it. That's all you do. There's like no real strategy to it other than getting closer to what you're trying to hit. But in Mario + Rabbids, going from point A to point B gives you a chance to jump, to dive through people, to completely change your strategy and unlock new movements and abilities. And the addition of real-time elements for you to dodge, for your enemies to dodge, adds this whole different blend of combat to the encounters in this game that not many games like it are able to accomplish. And it creates something that, even when you're looking at it, is charming and really pretty, and like Rabid Mario is one of the funniest characters like of this year. At the same time, is a challenge, is like asking you to really think through where you want to move before you attack. And not a lot of games like in this genre really task you with doing that. And that's really special. That's really cool. And it creates this form of tactics that honestly you just haven't really seen in the slew of tactics games that we've gotten this year. And for that reason, I think Mario + Rabbids Sparks of Hope is one of the best games of 2022.
actually annoyed that you have taken me away from this game to talk about this game. And that's because Vampire Survivors is brilliant, because it is not a game that you have to really kind of gear yourself up to play, because it is so simple to play it. You can play it with one hand if you wanted to. All you're doing is controlling your character as you walk around the map, and your character will auto attack, and all of these monsters, basically everything hell can throw at you, come and attack you. Your character will fight them, and the enemies will drop gems. You pick up the gems, you level up, you unlock new things, you unlock new pieces of equipment, new buffs, and that, on the surface, could be it, right? That could be an enjoyable game all of its own. However, once you realize that you can level up those weapons and you level up those buffs, and then you can combine them together to create super, super powerful weapons, and then you can do things like unlock the grimoire or the map on different levels and do different kind of mini quests within these worlds, it becomes half a hypnotic experience where all you're doing is just kind of watching the bar go up and just, yeah, I'm leveling up, I'm getting stronger, I'm killing all these enemies. And then part this exercise in logic, in I know I'm in the library, I know this enemy is gonna come get me at some point. What is the best gear that I could have at this point? What is the best combo of stuff that is gonna make sure that I get to the end of the level? And it gets to the point where there is so much going on screen that you can't look away. And I mean that in kind of the best way, and that's why I say hypnotic, because there are the sounds of you picking up the gems, there's the sound of you attacking, there's the sound of you leveling up, and so all of this together means that you are kind of just pulled in. And for 30 minutes, because that's the other great thing about Vampire Survivors, is that realistically all you have to do is survive for 30 minutes. And so it is this like lack of investment on your part. You know, I play it on my Steam Deck all the time when I'm watching TV. I don't want to tell you how many hours I put into this. I don't want to tell you how many hours my friends have put into Vampire Survivors. It is wonderful. In a year where there have been so many like big emotional stories, huge open worlds, Vampire Survivors is a game where success is not only completely achievable and attainable, the stakes are low, but it is constantly rewarding you just for being there. And that is why Vampire Survivors is one of the best games of 2022.
God of War Ragnarok, simply put, is one of the best and most complex story-driven games in the AAA space of the past few years. When we think about AAA, we tend to think of like big, epic, grand, cinematic moments, and God of War Ragnarok most definitely does that. I mean, it's quite literally Ragnarok, it's the end of the world. I mean, it's right there in the name. But beyond that, what Ragnarok does is it takes this huge, epic, grand scale and makes it felt on an individual and character level in such rich and complex ways. Every character from Atreus to Kratos to Odin to Thor to freaking Thrud, like who thought Thrud would be such a like deep emotional character in a game like this, gets such rich relationships and ideas and storylines to explore that it's honestly just completely resonant in every single second of this game. Beyond that though, the performances in this, most definitely driven by Christopher Judge, my man Teal'c from Stargate SG-1, are so excellent and nuanced, and it just really brings forward what you can do with performance in video games. And I just am in awe at every second of just seeing these actors get to play these characters. And one final thing on the story of this game is that while it may on the surface be about like mythology and like these big gods and things like that, it's a story that is very much about today, talking about systems of oppression and how we as individuals fit within these systems and how we can push back to fight for a more diverse and fulfilling world, and how we sort of create coalitions to push back against people who want to dominate others. And I found this game so deeply prescient, despite the fact that it's set millions of years ago in some mythological world. It was just absolutely wonderful. And then finally, it should go without saying, the game has some of the best combat and gameplay mechanics of any game this year. I adore just going up against the bosses and the sort of enemies in this game, and figuring out their varieties and their move sets and how best I can sort of fight back against them. I would spend hours just fighting one boss and trying to get all of the exact timings down, and it was just so much fun. And while I did want to throw my controller several times, I always did so out of love. So with that all being said, that is why God of War Ragnarok is one of the best games this year.
I think that Pentiment is a bit unassuming at first. I think that it seems like a very niche game, designed for a very niche group of gamers. It wasn't something that drew me in immediately. I didn't think that it was a must play for me. But the second that I started playing, I was completely enamored by it. I found that there were so many themes and so many feelings it explored that are so universal. And it seems like you wouldn't think that there'd be all these universal themes or these points of connections in a game that is about 16th century monks and that has this art style that's illuminated manuscripts. You wouldn't expect a game to tackle political issues and emotional issues, things that are deeply intimate and deeply personal, with as much tact as it does. And it does so in a way where you don't just feel like you're looking at history as something that happened in the past, or you're looking at these people as something that you can't connect to. You find pieces of yourself and pieces of the places and the people in this history, which is kind of the point of the game overall. It does a really good job of having that sort of meta narrative at the front. The whole time you're playing, you're thinking of how history really isn't as far back and as removed from us as you think it is. It's actually something that we're living right now. And the fact that this game could come out and make such a bold statement and kind of have that presence to it is really incredible, especially for something that, I was shocked by how well it also explores depression. That's not something that you would think that you would get from this game. It's not a game that markets itself as being, something that is about mental health, but so much of the second and third act explore that feeling and not being sure of, the choices that you make in life and where it's all leading you. And so often with these games where they're choice-based, like Pentiment is, you feel like there's a right choice and a wrong choice. But when you live life, you realize that it's not as simple as that, and there are no right or wrong choices. There are just shades of gray, and Pentiment really explores that and kind of the heaviness and the burden with having that responsibility. It does the choice system, honestly, in the best way that I've ever seen implemented in any game. And it's just such a beautiful, cohesive experience that I really think it's a must play, and that is why it is one of the best games of 2022.
It is now my great honor to reveal GameSpot's Game of the Year. It is Elden Ring. In the words of Tamar Hussein, the fact that From Software has been able to instill this sense of freedom alone is impressive. But being able to do this while also strengthening the design principles that are core to its game is a monumental achievement. It ensures that, all these years later, the defining features of the studio's games remain fresh. Elden Ring is a game that delivers a role-playing experience stronger than any that From Software has created before. One that encourages experimentation and venturing outside your comfort zone and rewards it with memorable gameplay opportunities. And there you have it. That is GameSpot's top 10 best of the year. Now, I just need to reiterate that there were a lot of fantastic games that came out this year. And all of us here, all the lovely, beautiful folk behind me, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out the 10 that represented us as GameSpot. But that doesn't mean that the game you love isn't good too. So most importantly, just enjoy what you enjoy. Love what you love and play games, because really at the end of the day, that's just what we all like doing. Okay, I'm Kurt, this is GameSpot. Till next time, till next year, see you later.